The mansion had been abandoned for nearly 50 years. Locals said the Harrington family vanished overnight. No note, no trace, leaving the house to rot in silence. Yet somehow, despite the weathered gates and overgrown drive, the place always felt alive. I wasn't supposed to be there. I was a historian chasing a story for a small documentary about haunted estates, but curiosity pulled me in. The iron gates creaked open as I approached, almost as if welcoming me. The front door groaned on its hinges when I pushed it open. Inside, the air smelled of dust, wood polish, and something I couldn't name, faintly metallic, like dried blood. A grand chandelier hung precariously from the ceiling, crystals coated in grime, catching the weak light from my lantern in jagged reflections. The hallways stretched endlessly. Portraits of the Harrington family stared down at me, their eyes seemingly tracking my movements. I reached out to wipe the dust off a portrait of a young woman in a blue gown, and the air shifted. A soft whisper, almost inaudible, came from the end of the hall. "You shouldn't be here." I froze. The whisper repeated, now clearer, echoing off the high ceilings. It wasn't coming from the hall. It was coming from inside the walls themselves. I tried to rationalize it. The wind, old pipes, my imagination, but a sudden cold draft ran down my spine. The front door slammed shut on its own, plunging me into near darkness. The chandelier above swayed slightly, though I hadn't touched it. And then I noticed it. The floor beneath my feet. One of the wooden panels had fresh scratches. I steadied my lantern, trying to control my breathing. The sound of the door slamming still echoed in my chest like a heartbeat. The scratched floorboards led deeper into the mansion, straight toward a pair of tall oak doors half open on their hinges. When I pushed them, they revealed what had once been the mansion's library, enormous, 2 stories tall, with a spiral staircase curling up to a balcony. Dust floated in the air like snow, and the smell of old paper and mildew filled my lungs. Books were everywhere, scattered as if someone had searched in a hurry. But one caught my eye. A red-ribboned leather diary placed dead center on a mahogany desk, as if waiting for me. The first pages were harmless. Tea parties, business trips, social events. Then came a page smudged with dried tears. "I keep hearing things at night. The servants quit, saying the house breathes. Father won't listen. Mother prays more than she sleeps." A later entry. "He's back, the man in the black coat. I see him in the mirrors. He stands behind me but never speaks." The handwriting began to shake after that, growing frantic. The walls move, the clocks whisper, the rooms don't stay where they should. And then the final line. "If anyone finds this, do not stay after midnight." As I read that last line, I heard something faint. Tick, tick, tick. A grandfather clock stood near the fireplace, its glass cracked. I approached it, but its hands were missing, and still the ticking grew louder. Then, deep in the walls, something knocked back. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I spun around, scanning the room. My lantern flickered, throwing my shadow across the shelves. For a brief second, I saw another shape standing next to mine. Taller, thinner, wrong. I blinked, and it was gone. Trying to calm myself, I lifted the lantern again and caught sight of a large painting over the fireplace. It was a portrait of the Harrington family. But now the faces had changed. The mother's eyes were gone, the father's mouth stretched unnaturally wide, and the daughter, Eleanor, was staring directly at me. And right below the painting, carved into the wood, was a single word: run. The temperature dropped instantly. My breath turned white in the air, and from somewhere upstairs came the faint, unmistakable sound of a piano playing, slow, broken notes echoing down the hall. The sound was faint at first, just a few soft piano notes drifting down from the upper floors. Each note stretched too long, as if the keys were being pressed by something with hesitation. I tried convincing myself it was just an old instrument caught by a draft. But then came a short melody, precise, intentional, and every light in the hall flickered once. I gripped my lantern and started up the grand staircase. The steps groaned under my weight, sending echoes through the house. Halfway up, I noticed portraits along the walls had changed again. Every face in every frame was now turned toward the stairs, their eyes blank white. The piano melody continued, now mixed with the soft rustling of movement. The double doors to the music room were slightly open. I nudged one with my shoulder and it creaked in protest. Inside stood a grand piano covered in dust, thick as ash. The air was freezing, cold enough that my breath rolled out in small clouds. No one was there, yet the keys moved, slow and deliberate. Each press of ivory came with a sound like a distant heartbeat. Then the piano stopped. Silence. And in that silence, a whisper. Closer this time, right beside my ear. "We waited for you." I spun, raising the lantern, but it flared and died, plunging me into near darkness. For a split second, in the dim glow of the dying flame, I saw a figure sitting at the piano, its head tilted toward me, its hands, long and pale, resting on the keys. When I stumbled backward into the hallway, the entire layout had changed. The staircase was gone. The hallways no longer lined up the way they should. The doors all looked identical, stretching endlessly in both directions. I tried one at random, a bedroom. Inside, a canopy bed draped in torn fabric, a vanity mirror cracked in two, and sitting on the vanity, a music box, its crank slowly turning on its own. A child's lullaby played softly as the mirror began to fog. Words appeared written by an invisible hand. "Help me find the others." I froze. The reflection behind me showed someone standing at the door, a woman in a tattered blue gown. Her face was hidden by her hair, her posture stiff. I turned to face her. But there was no one there. Only the faint scent of lavender and something burning. When I looked back at the mirror, the reflection had changed again. Now, it showed me standing inside the painting from the library. The same decayed family portraits, only this time I was part of it. The music box clicked shut. The mirror cracked again. And then, from the corner of the room, came the sound of footsteps approaching fast. The footsteps stopped just outside the bedroom door. I didn't breathe. The floor creaked once, twice, and then silence again. I slowly backed toward the hallway, gripping my dead lantern like a weapon. The air had turned heavier, damp, suffocating, thick with the smell of wet earth. And that's when I noticed it, a trail of muddy footprints leading down the hall. Barefoot, each print darker than the last, soaked with something darker than mud. I followed them, because at that point, curiosity had overpowered fear. The prints led to a narrow servant staircase spiraling downward. A draft of air seeped up from below, cold, metallic, like a cellar that hadn't been opened in decades. The door to the basement was bolted from the outside, but the bolt hung loosely, half-snapped. When I slid it free, the wood moaned like something alive. The stairs were steep and slick with condensation. I descended slowly, every step echoing back up into darkness. My flashlight flickered weakly to life, its beam catching glints of old bottles, rotting barrels, and fragments of furniture. And then the smell hit me. Sharp, unmistakable, formaldehyde. In the corner stood a series of jars on wooden shelves. Inside them floated preserved animal parts, eyes, hearts, limbs, all tagged with neat little labels in looping handwriting. Subject 3A. Subject 5B. Eleanor's project. I moved deeper into the cellar, the air colder with each step. At the far end was another door, newer than the rest, sealed with heavy chains. Someone had scratched words into the wood with fingernails. "Do not open. He feeds." I should have left. I should have turned back right there. But I didn't. When I cut through the first chain, I heard a low groan from inside. Not human, not animal, but something that existed between both. The last chain fell away. The door creaked open to reveal a hidden chamber. Inside were old photographs pinned to the walls, each one of the Harrington family members, but their faces slowly decaying from frame to frame. In the center of the room stood a large covered shape, draped in a white cloth soaked through with something brown. I reached for it. The cloth was cold, stiff, and stuck to whatever lay beneath. When I peeled it away, I realized it wasn't a table at all, and it was a stone altar. And lying across it was a human skeleton, chained at the wrists and ankles. But the chains weren't old. They were shiny, new. The air in the chamber shifted, warm breath against the back of my neck. I turned slowly, but the flashlight sputtered out. Darkness swallowed everything. Then from behind me, a whisper, the same voice that had followed me since the foyer. He's still hungry. Something moved in the dark, the sound of heavy dragging, bones scraping stone. The whisper grew louder, almost desperate now. Run before he finds you too. And from the corner of the room, two faintly glowing eyes blinked open. The glow in the corner brightened, not like light but like eyes adjusting to me. I froze, gripping the useless flashlight as the thing shifted closer. Every step echoed against the stone walls like someone dragging chains through a grave. The air thickened with decay, rot, and something older, like the smell of damp earth that's been turned too many times. And then came the sound of bones scraping stone, deliberate and slow. "Eleanor, is that you?" The voice was deep, layered, human, and something else beneath it, something ancient. I took a step back toward the door, my heel catching the edge of a broken jar. The glass shattered. Instantly, the eyes snapped toward the noise. From the darkness emerged what had once been a man, or the suggestion of one. Skin like wet parchment clung to the skull. Its mouth opened wider than any human's should, a black hollow that exhaled dust and whispers. Chains hung from its wrists, dragging behind like tails of metal. It stepped into the thin beam of my dying light, and I saw the Harrington crest burned into its chest, the family's emblem seared deep into rotten flesh. I stumbled backward, trying to climb the stairs, but every time I reached for the rail, the wood warped away. The mansion was shifting again, closing in around me. The creature shrieked, not loud but low and vibrating through the floor. It lunged and I ran. The corridors twisted, doors appeared where walls should be. Staircases looped into themselves. Behind me, the dragging chains scraped closer, faster, scraping sparks on the floor. Every light that flickered to life showed me something worse. Faces watching from paintings, shadows stretching across ceilings, doors slamming themselves shut. I burst into the foyer, gasping for air, my lungs burning. The front doors were wide open now, though I never heard them move. Moonlight spilled through, pale and cold. I didn't hesitate. As I sprinted across the cracked marble, I heard footsteps above me, dozens of them. From the balconies, the portraits now looked alive, their eyes following my every move. And then, one by one, the whispering voices began to speak in unison. "You shouldn't have come. You broke the seal. Now he walks again." The chandelier above trembled, its cracked frame groaning until it snapped free. It crashed to the floor just inches behind me, shattering glass and scattering dust into the air. I dove through the front doors as they slammed shut behind me with a thunderous finality. When I looked back from the gates, the mansion was quiet again. Windows black, still, lifeless. The wind carried faint music, the same piano melody echoing through the trees. The next morning I returned with local police, but when we reached the grounds, there was no mansion, just the overgrown hill where it had once stood, blank and silent, as if it had never existed. They said there's no record of a Harrington family in the county archives, no deeds, no deaths, no mention at all. But on my desk, later that night, I found the red ribbon diary. Its last page was still damp with ink, and in handwriting that wasn't mine, it said, "Thank you for setting us free, but he is still hungry." If this story kept you watching, there's another real horror waiting for you. Click on the screen, and don't watch it alone.